Okay then, a nice loose watercolour, this time a very impressionist piece, step by step. Again we're going to use a lot of wet in wet technique here, and we're going to use the Russian paints again. We'll take it colour by colour, working from lights to darks, leaving the lights behind. Now with this particular painting, I do want to show you how we can use pastels with watercolour, so I may well do that at the end of this one. We'll see how successful it is as a loose impressionist piece, showing you how you can work a very complicated or seemingly complicated picture very loosely and then tighten up at the end, just to the right stages, wet into wet, and possibly using some pastel at the end then. So here we go, and we're going to leave all of these whites behind here. We need to start with the lightest colours. In this case I'm going to need some nice light yellows here, slightly green tint, because we've got some blue in there from before. Again, I'll work all of these very light yellows in here, stage by stage, wherever they are. If you've got the paint on your brush, while it's there you may as well use it. I'm not going to keep going back and putting colours in if we don't need to. I'm going to paint in these lighter colours then at first, just to get the effect of light here. Just very light lemon yellow at first here then. So that's there and there. And that's going to be reflecting down here later, but we'll deal with that area in a moment. Let's just get this done first of all. Now, in some cases we can put green state in, but in this case we don't need to. We can make our green. So I'm going to take a little bit of turquoise and drop that in here, and I'm going to let it spread out, letting some of the yellow just, and you see how I've got the painting at an angle, so I'm able to let these turquoise drip down into this, right down and round here. So there's not much in fact of the yellow left showing just there. There'll be a bit more showing down here, leaving some of that. So dab, dab, dab. And for this painting I'm using just one brush. I'm just going to use an oval mop, in this case a Pro Art, large Pro Art oval mop. It's a lovely brush to use, and we can do, I think, just about this entire painting with it. I doubt very much, as I'm doing an impressionist piece, whether I'll have to use another brush. See how that paint has spread out into there. While it's still just wet enough, we'll just tickle that in there, leaving the edges slightly broken to get that soft effect. I want to go a little bit darker into there. So we've got this turquoise blue. Take some of that turquoise blue, and I will just mix a bit of that turquoise blue down here in the mixing palette with a tad of yellow ochre, which will make me a much warmer, darker green. And we'll drop that in over here. So yellow ochre now. I might even drop some warmer into that too in a minute. Let's get that going. Yellow ochre and this lovely turquoise green will give me this beautiful dark yellow green here, much warmer green. I can break that into the edges here so it's dark against the light and just spreading in a bit. Coming right the way down through here, right through here, down and round. And we're going to leave some light areas there, just the effect of trees, light coming through those trees, up to the back here, just down through into there. So it's fairly straightforward, wasn't it? Still painting some wet into wet there. I'm going to want to go a bit stronger into that in just a moment. While I've still got that colour on my brush, we'll drop that into here a bit more. So that strong yellow ochre and that turquoise. And we'll drop some of that warmth into here now, so the edge is showing out. I'm still painting wet into wet, and I'm only concentrating on this crowd, this big bundle of trees here, just above. Right up into here again, with that quite sharp turquoise blue, and making my greens by using the yellows into it and leaving the light standing behind. Little brush strokes, leaving the light standing behind, wet into wet at the moment. Soak that up because the painting's at an angle, so the paint's going to drop down there. Right, while that's still damp, I want to go darker still, so now I'm going to go right down to a very deep Prussian blue, and with that add some burnt sienna to give me a much warmer dark. And you drop that down through into here, right round this umbrella here, So we're playing now my darks against my lights already here, just giving an indication, and this is what this whole painting is going to be about actually, is indicating. It's just giving an impression of these shapes behind here, coming down here into here, an indication of these lights and dark leaves that's coming up behind, right through here. That's still wet there. So Prussian blue and burnt sienna now into that mix, give a much darker mix, and we can bring that, dot and dash it into here a bit, and you notice the paint is just starting to dry here, so that means I get slightly sharper, darker edges, and where it's still wet I can just bring these bits of leaf into here, and look at the different marks I can make with one brush. Don't have to keep changing brushes to do all the different marks. By using this one brush, both sideways and flat, I can really produce a whole series of different marks. It might be an interesting experiment for you to do just that with your oval mop before you can start the painting. If you've watched this video through first of all, which I would advise to do before starting the painting, then it's an idea to do some experimenting both with the colours and with the brush, and just get this way of painting these different marks onto here. How that tree explodes out into there. You can go darker still with that blue into there and that brown, because I haven't used a bit warmer there now, look, down and round. It's still wet there, so I can still paint these lovely dark shapes in, and I'm going to come right down through into here where it's still wet, going quite dark in amongst this lot. This is the very light bit here that's going to be standing out a lot, right through down around the umbrellas. We want the light against the dark, so I'm painting light against dark, rough against smooth, much deeper Prussian blue and this burnt sienna to get my darks here, texturing up little dabs, dots and dashes to get the explosive feeling of these branches, and leaving the lights behind like this, look. And I'm alternating my strokes. In other words, I'm not just making them all the same direction. My brush strokes are changing direction with those branches, dropping in darker and darker and darker as I go along. So we've got the effect now of that background all in one go. Now just take a little bit of clean water, just come back in there and just soften this area just in a little bit too sharp just there. Just want that bit of light to come shining out there. And if we want to, we can always take a little bit of light out here and there by lifting out the paint. Look, if I come back with a dry brush now, I can just use the tip of that dry brush just to lift out little bits of paint like that, to give the effect of the light coming out into the darks. There we are, that will do that bit. You'll be surprised how that impression will work later on. So we've got the whole of that stage one done. We started with the lemon yellow, and then we added in the turquoise, then we made the Prussian blue and the burnt sienna with the darker greens. Then we added the yellow ochre and the turquoise, then the Prussian blue and the burnt sienna, and we worked right the way through to doing that in one block. Let's keep the rest just as simple, shall we? Come down now to painting these areas. And there are several reds going on here. We've got a cool red, which is this one, it's almost like a pink, and we've got a much brighter red. So we're going to use our rose, or magenta would do, and we're going to use cadmium red. So we'll just test those out on here. These reds got a little bit messy now, so they want cleaning up. So that's quite a dark red. And sometimes we want to drop one colour into another to make our brights. Cadmium yellows. Clean my paints up a little bit before I get started. Should have done this before, really. What have we got here? So there's a light cadmium red, yep. So what I want to do now is I'm going to paint these umbrellas, and I'm going to be using a cool and a warm red. I'm going to start off by painting in some cadmium yellow, same brush, use this brush all the way through. I'm going to paint the whole of this umbrella here with cadmium yellow, straight down through and into there. Nice and quick, simple shapes. The whole of this hooded figure here, cadmium yellow. We're going to paint that cadmium yellow into the edge of the bag here. Around his head here there's a bit. The background above this light green here, we've got a bit of cadmium yellow there. Just coming up into there. Behind here, and those. You notice I've let that green that's still wet there just drop into that a little bit. Down the back there. Let that just dry out a fraction. Bring that round a bit more. Now into that I want to put my cooler red, so I need to find my either magenta or rose. In this case I'm going to use a bit of magenta, it's very purple magenta. Using that very thinly, I'm just going to paint in a little bit of a shape there, quite thinly. I'm going to bring it round the top of that rose there, let that just drop down. I'm going to put some lines in here very quickly with the brush that are in the same angle as the lines of the stripes underneath here. Just a few stripes like that. We want to keep these as an impression, a mere impression. So quick strokes with your brush, draw them in, be bold. We're not going to copy it exactly, we're not here to do that, we're here to make an impression, a good impression. Right, and that cool is going to come down the back here as well. Now let's go to our very warm red, this one, and really whack some of that into here. And look at that lovely difference now, because it's going into the yellow, flowing down here, around the edge here. We're letting the colour mix in and do the work. Little strokes again. You can see the difference now in the cool and the warm red. Come down to here where it's still wet, painting this figure. These lovely reds coming down the front of him here, down the back of his arm. We only want an impression. And these reds are coming into here as well. So we're going to come across some of these cool reds that we made earlier. Not all of them, just some of them. Just to give an impression of it. So now we've got the cool against the warm there. It's also coming down that red behind here. Without any yellow at all, it's just straight in here. Go down that bit there. Right round to here and in. Little touch of it coming down here. Look how easily we can make these forms. Come back. Whilst we're working on these cool and warms, we'll take that same magenta, thin it down a bit, and I'm going to come into this umbrella here, paint the whole of that umbrella in one foul swoop, and the same up here, just quick strokes, paint them in, and the same magenta is coming on in lovely lines here. Now we're going to have great big strokes here. I want nice big stripes coming across here. Just so bold, look. Nice and bold and fresh. You want our watercolours to be lovely and fresh. And those lines come down through here behind, at that angle. You can draw these in first if you want to, if you're a bit unsure, or you can just put them straight in as I'm doing. Come back to our red. With the red now we can just tickle in, letting little bits of that red come into this where it's a bit warmer. It's the light. Look how quickly our painting is now appearing. Going to just bring that red down the background here, all the way down through these. And the same red, we haven't got it back here, we want to now just touch, while it's still wet, parts of this, where the warmer red exists. Such quick, easy strokes. And where we start to see other colours as well. Now back here, these indications of colour that are coming in to all of the background produce here. We see these bits of warm. It's on your brush. Much warmer just back here, for instance. Just coming down there amongst this yellow here. And then we come back to the colours we've already been using. We've been using our burnt sienna and blue. Let's take some of that burnt sienna and just come out there with that same burnt sienna and blue, a bit darker under here. We're just going to start on our dark soon. So there's all our bright reds sorted out, loosely as that. We want all our light colours, we want all our bright colours in. So we've got to be doing that at the moment. So we've done our greens, we've done a lot of our reds. We're going to do a lot more of all of these colours in the background. So that was section 2. Let's start looking at the very light blues now. We had that beautiful turquoise earlier. Now I want to use it a lot more purely. We've got several blues to use here. We've got a lovely ultramarine blue, and we've got this turquoise. Right, let's take that turquoise thinly, and we'll just find this. There's a lovely cooler box back here. We'll just put that in as one colour shape. If we put like a jigsaw the right colours in the right places, in the right shapes, so single brush stroke down here for those legs, 1-2 brush strokes like that, quick as that. Let's let that colour reflect in later, so I'm going to take a bit of water and just, when I've come down here, I'm just going to soften that back in again, let that trickle down. Now into that lovely light blue, I want to take a warmer blue. We're going to my ultramarine now. Ultramarine, a little touch of that lovely magenta from earlier, and let's just drop that in there while it's still wet. We'll just feel those legs coming down this side and there, leaving that light just shining out there. Little tickles, as easy as that, look. The same here. I've got that colour on my brush. I'm going to paint the whole of those legs in a couple of strokes like that. A little bit stronger with the colour. The warmer blue. I'm going to come down with that warmer blue and that magenta down the outside there. We'll paint that shape in behind this head here. Single brush strokes. I'm going to do the same here. I'm going to paint the whole of that, because we're on stage 3 now, the whole of this figure with that same ultramarine blue and magenta mix in just blobs. But while it's still wet, we've got to work on it. Now, this one here, the warms, take that same mix and just drop it into the edges here and around the edge of the arm and the sleeve to give the feeling of creases. And I want to use that same mix over here, so I'm going to take the ultramarine magenta mix and now bring it right through this lady's trousers here in a couple of strokes. So straight down there, straight round here, down to her feet, leaving the light shoes, all in just a couple of strokes like that. Him the same colour going down his legs here, so a couple of strokes again, through to here, big brush strokes. Now we're using the edge, the flat of the oval mop, lovely way to use it. Anywhere else? Yes, well, while we've got that colour on, we've got to work quickly because we do want to be able to come back to these and work wet into wet. This umbrella here, quite thin, it goes darker under there in a moment. We'll come right round to her face here. The whole of that shape can be painted in at the moment. A bit of dark going along under here. We can start in this umbrella now, same colours going on, and I'm going to dab that. I'm going to paint that part of the way around here, and I'm going to dab it so it comes down with the edge like this, just where those little marks of the parasol come. Wants to be a little bit more magenta there actually, a little bit warmer. I'm going to be exact. We've already done our drawing, we've already worked out where things are going to go, so I'm going to be exact on it. It'll use the edge of the brush look to pick out these little lines and things here. Now, he's already in, so now we're going to come back with the colour and give it a second coat. So that blue, ultramarine blue, and the, while it's still just wet enough, coming all the way down the side of that leg, we're going to bring in the creases with the edge of the brush like this, look. Just flicking it in all the way down to the inside of his leg here, the whole of that leg, inside of that leg there. And we'll just flick around these creases right down to here, and to come back in and link him in a bit more in a moment. Taking that darker colour, that is the ultramarine blue and the magenta still, to go a bit warmer up here, to cover the whole of him here, right through down into here, just with that same colour. Now back over here, I'm going to go to my Prussian blue and the burnt sienna, which is my darker colour again, the warmer colour. And again, while this is still just wet enough, I'm going to come in with my shadows here and paint in these shadows on this figure, like this, all the way down, round that bag. Just getting the feeling of it, just basic impressions of shapes. I'm not going into detail down there as well, but it's dark around here, leaving those light bits standing out. And look at the effect of light against dark that we get just with simple strokes like this. Now we come back to this fella here and we work the shadow out underneath here, just paint in these jigsaw shapes, just paint in these darks now against the lights. That's dark all the way down there, so I want that quite strong. Deep blue, Prussian blue, and a wee bit of the burnt sienna, and it's quite strong down here. The whole of that is strong, the whole of his arm is strong. Round the back, down that elbow, around here. But most of his back here is fairly flat. Right in and round there, leaving that light shining. We could always put some green in there later if we want. And now down to this figure here, we've got to get the shadow under her back of her leg there. A little bit down here, around the back of the foot. Not much more to do, let's keep it simple. I'm going to go darker into there in just a moment. And I'm going to darken him down already. I'm going to let those lights disappear a bit, because I'm going to put even darker onto there. So we'll make our decisions as we go along. This dark's coming down the side of his leg here, run to the back here. You see how quickly the figures are just appearing. Using this very dark, come back to the umbrella here. We can paint in the underneath of the umbrella now. Round this face, we can start to put in bits of figure behind, legs. So dark, just light against dark, warm against cool, all the way along here we're playing these different tones. Go across some of that now, take some of the white away, up to here. Using the tip of the brush, I'm hoping not to have to use a very fine brush. If I make this brush into a blade, I can use the edge of the brush just to tickle across these lines, like this, just to give the impression. All I want is an impression, an illusion of these things. Not exactly. If you want to draw those in ahead of time because you're worried, then do that. Don't be afraid to do anything that you require. No cheating in this. No cheating, we're just going to enjoy ourselves. And we're just painting one shape against another. Back to here now with that same colour. We're using the Prussian blue and burnt sienna, but thinly now. And we're just taking down some of these lighter tones behind here and using little shapes and dots and dashes to get the illusion of what's going on behind. Let's look to this lass here now again. Her coat needs to be our magenta and a little bit of the Prussian blue. Wants to go in quite dark, more magenta into that. There we are, lovely warm deep. We might have to make that a little bit more warmer by adding some burnt sienna to it in just a moment while it's still wet. Take some of the cadmium red, work that into here. Can we do that there? So we've got these lovely rich colours happening down here, coming into here. The same with him. Let's bring a few of those strokes in. We're just working on the figures at the moment, just bringing one colour into another while they're still damp. So lovely wet into wet effects look. Come back to my cadmium yellow. I'm going to put a bit of that across her face here, and then across the headband. Let that come into the body a bit. Lift a bit of that red and just drop it onto the face a bit to give the orange of the face there. And down around here. Just by using one colour against another, you can build this up. Same colours on my brush, I'm bringing it across and through here now. All the colours on my brush, if it's anywhere else, in the background here, for instance where I am here now. Let's use it, and we'll just bring it in there. We're getting that lovely feeling of space now. Comes around there. Now I need to make some darkers again, so back to my Prussian, and this time I'm going to put a little bit of burnt sienna into in with the indigo and the Prussian, and just darken right down with the Prussian and indigo, a bit more blue back into her here. Across the top of her head here, just giving an impression of light against dark down to her here. Now this figure, which isn't dark enough yet, again I'm going to my much darkers now, working down to the next stage now with my real darks, just coming in and around here, all the way down that side. So Prussian blue now and the burnt sienna, and I've gone much stronger, and I'm really layering in these darks. I just wanted you to see how we can paint so loosely with watercolour and get these lovely effects and colours, richness. Just put a few strokes, don't have to get complicated. Again, and with the same brush, I want to find her umbrella here, so let's just find part of her face as well. And we want to just quickly, with one flick, just bring down part of the umbrella there, the feeling of that umbrella coming down here, and the other bits and pieces that are going on behind here in darks. Just find a few of them, textures, what's going on behind this figure here, down and around there, and up here, and behind these figures here. And we've got a few darks happening here amongst the just indications with the tip of my brush. All I'm doing is just making an impression, just feeling my way with little marks that are about the objects. I'm not copying the object, I'm not going in as an illustration. This is a painting with just a few stylized marks, if you like, to bring out these wonderful shapes and colours. Darker down here, go back into those legs with simple strokes. See how easy that's becoming. Right, let's work our way down through here now. We've still got those darks coming into here. Indications of the things happening down and around here. So go through these various stages. Now, because I'm not painting wet into wet now, I'm painting very much wet against dry, you can stop at this stage whenever you like. You can just have a little break and come back into this a bit later. I'm just going to bring out some more effects with these. Just trying to find the edge of that umbrella there now, just bring it out a bit. Well, this effect of this lovely wet day with a bit of sunlight just coming through. There we go. This thing is really going to happen when we start to paint in all the wet floor here. Those legs, we want just those legs got to be done just with a couple of brush strokes. So all I want to do is one leg, then two legs like that. Keep them simple, nice and dark. This is the Prussian blue and the burnt sienna, and then there's a darker shape coming right down through. Take that Prussian blue and burnt sienna again, down through here. It's much darker, they're much darker underneath here. Just let these light against dark shapes form here to give the feeling of people behind. It's only an approximation, and making the marks in approximately the right shapes about these objects and what's going on under here. Around there. Then we've got this lovely parasol here. I'm going to paint the underneath of it there. Just one stroke look. Just go around that slightly and just indicate some of the edge of that parasol. And we've got various shapes happening around behind here. And we'll just indicate those in. And already we've got the feeling of figures and light there. Down here, we continue these legs. Same brush, one stroke down, then the foot here, just an indication of feet around that bag, underneath the bags here, back of that leg. Somebody else is just coming in behind there. We've got somebody dark here. Now I'm going to use that wash, that colour a little bit thinner to start painting some of these colours in here. We've got a darker head here, and let's work it up a bit heavier now. We'll take a bit of magenta and that colour to make a purple. I'm going to go quite dark just into here now and around that umbrella again. Underneath here again, bringing out those colours. A little bit more magenta, a little bit warm, and a wee touch of the burnt sienna. So we get these beautiful colours coming out now. Going back over some of these darks a little bit more, just a few strokes. Like that. Letting our light stand out. Probably won't have to use pastel on this one at all, because as I say, I want to show you at some stage how we can use pastel with this, but we don't need to with this one particularly. Take some water and just thin the ultramarine and burnt sienna mix down a bit. Got legs, feet coming in here. There's a lovely chair that comes in here. I just want to indicate that chair, so that we can reflect it in just a moment. It's one of these adjustable chairs with the 4 feet on. You can make reflect in a minute in the water. All of these darks coming back up into here. We've got the feeling of various figures and shapes that are an impression of them back here. Not going to paint them all in exactly. Right back to here, let's take that lovely deep Prussian blue and the burnt sienna and start to really whack in these dark shapes here now. I'm going to leave a slight line in between here and there because I want there's a lovely pole coming down all the way down here. Comes right the way down through there. Let's really make this much darker and heavier just here now, this paint. So I'm really going to whack in some quite heavy paint just here. Let it come down at the edges into here and soften in. Actually, we're starting on another stage now because we're starting looking at the base a bit more now. Really going much darker with that, dropping in the warms. These shapes of these bits of clothing behind here, and actually that dark green changes from here. It comes up, that pole comes up through there and then changes into the green there in just a moment. You'll see what I'm doing in a minute for that. Comes across here like this. Simple, clear strokes, just painting in approximate shapes that are about what is there. We're not doing it exactly by any means. We're just giving an illusion of it. As we go on, we can drop in darker and warmer. So I'm changing from warms to darks here. I'm putting more brown in now, more burnt sienna in amongst this here to get the feeling of this. Now I'm going to go back to more blue, much deeper with the magenta and the blue here. Going back into these dark shapes again to get the feeling of it being much darker back there. That figure down the side of her face. Building it up, going backwards and forwards, building it up like this. It's a lovely loose way to work. Right back to here, bring in these darker shapes again here and drop in some more darks there. See how the picture's coming to life. Right, greens. Now I'm not going to mix a green this time. I'm going to use some emerald green from my palette straight in, and just paint that directly into here. Let it blend in with these colours all the way down into here. I want this to blend right the way through, and that same green I'm going to use down here and let it blend in down through there as it comes all the way down through the umbrella pole. Comes in the background here and across here. Bit of light shining there. It's much darker as it comes through just here. All the way through there, with no light showing here at all, just here we have. Right through to there. And I'm almost ready now to start on my base. Put a bit more of this green down through here amongst the reds as an opposite to give shadow. So I'm using a little wash of that emerald green through here to give the feeling of shadow here of the poles behind the canopy here and down here. So simple. A little bit of green now. We start reflecting. One colour comes with another. I'm going to start reflecting some of this green into these other colours here, into her hair here for instance, and back here, and going on behind her here a bit more, that green coming down there into him and through here. Well, I've got the colour on my brush, let's use it where it's required, reflecting on these umbrellas and things here and down there. Now this fun bit down here, the bit we've all been waiting for, where we're going to actually get the feeling of wet surfaces down here. What I'm going to do straight away is take my lemon yellow from earlier, and I'm going to paint that as a thin wash vertically right the way down through here and actually into him slightly. Don't worry if you go over things slightly on this. Leave light areas where they are. Yes, if you've got a very light area you can leave it in. Vertical brush strokes right down through here. I want this lovely yellow coming right the way down from the trees. It's reflecting from up here in these trees. I'm going to put that yellow back up into there. All the way down through here, behind them. And suddenly it starts pulling everything together. Got big strokes. Now we're on the last section of this painting. You can stop at many parts of this, providing you get the wet into wet effects, providing you're alright with that when they're required. You can stop at any one section when you like. A bit more of the yellows coming into here, through in the background. Now I want the warms. I'm going to do a bit of dry brush work here soon as well, which means I can dry this brush right down. Come through these figures here, little bits of light left. We're already starting to get this feeling of the lights. Now back to my earlier colours. We're going to add some of that turquoise to the yellow to make the greens. We want these greens coming down here, making quite strong just there. We want lovely strong colours. Bring them into here a bit more again. Let's bring them down through here, down into here. So the yellow and the turquoise blue to make this lovely strong green going on behind here. We're going to put some darks in there again as well. Nearly all vertical strokes at the moment because of reflections. I'm just going to put the cooler blues in just a moment as well. Those are coming in. And I'm going to start just bringing a few strokes across the painting now. So we've got our verticals. Now I'm going to start bringing in some horizontal lines through here until the whole paper is going to be fairly well soaked. Right, back to my warmer blue, the ultramarine blue, and a little touch of the magenta. And let's look at the warmer colours here. Quite dark, warm through here. Again, I'm going to put a little bit of dry brush work. Right, clean water down through here, and I'm going to take that magenta and bring it downwards thinly, that magenta here, thinly, and that lovely cobalt blue, so that lovely ultramarine blue, right down through here, into there, to get this feeling of wet into it. It looks a total mess, but it'll work in a moment, to see very hopefully. So again, we come back to these lovely light colours. And I'm going to want some of that red going on as well. Our bright cadmium red wants to come into here now. All wet into wet, and just let the paint do the work. So I'm using magenta and the red thinly just to drop into here and let the paint do the work for us all the way down here on the vertical. Get these lovely effects, look, right down through here. All the way down with vertical marks, just letting it flow, bringing them through in horizontals in places. The greens and the, got more green here, so I want to take some more of that emerald green. I'm just going to drop some of that in there, down through his legs here. It's quite dark just there. And now we're starting to get the feeling of the wet day. Now we're going to go towards our darks. Remember when we made our darks where we used the warm and the ultramarine and the magenta, didn't we? Some of the lovely blues. Let's go back into here now and we'll start to find the darks that are going on behind here. The reflections of these figures back here, coming down to their feet here, around behind the various stand stools, down to her feet here. We've lost a bit of the white on the shoes, but let's not worry about that. We could have left that, but I'm not too worried about that. We'll just find where her shoes are here. We'll just find where his shoes are here. I'm going to put a bit darker on those in just a moment. And if there's darks there, we can start to let those darks reflect down. So I'm going to start now bringing in, while it's wet into wet, I'm going to start bringing in these shadows of people, coming across here as well as down. We're just flicking the brush over to get that feeling of these wonderful reflections all the way down through here. Stronger in places, lighter in others. This is our magenta and ultramarine. Just so loosely, and we can touch into this with darks, sharp darks later, which is just what we're going to do. Now I'm going to take my my Prussian and the burnt sienna, which gave us the really lovely darks. So my Prussian blue, burnt sienna, to really find these darks again here and around down here. We find that we've lost that chair a bit there, so we'll just bring that out again a bit. It's going to be reflecting down. We get this lovely effect of a wet day, and these people, these figures are going to be reflecting down a bit here now. Not too much, just soften them down a bit, make them a bit darker in a minute. We just want to get the feeling of them. Bits of dark, those legs there coming down. And these touches of dark that are coming in here, behind. And we can just paint with a wet mess basically. It's what we call controlled accident. We are controlling the accident of all of these things here. We're still painting a lot wet into wet. Not to totally lose things, we're just picking them out as we go along. And these lovely reflections here of the figures. And where the lights are against darks, we want to bring those out. Got indications of other tones, now's the time we can start to play with those. And you see how loosely and lively we can make a painting up with watercolour, using watercolour for its best qualities. Yes, we could go in here and put light, delicate glazes on. Just every single painting could be painted in so many different ways, and we're just using one way here to paint this picture. Just one of many, many ways. Let's bring some of those darks now across here. Right, at this stage we've almost finished the penultimate stages. In other words, I'm almost there. What I've got to do now is let it dry off, and then I can come back and put in hard edge details over this to actually make it look like this is a wet pavement. Then I'll just let that dry off a bit now before coming back in with final lights and darks and highlights, just to pick out these details of our wet market day near Hull, where this picture was taken. And you can enjoy painting wet into wet and controlling how much the edges flood, how much they flow, how much detail you actually put in and want to put in at the end, how much you actually need, if you just want to indicate a lattice work like that, or just where you want to go with it. Don't want too much, just indications of shapes and colours. So I'm going to stop it there, let it dry a bit, and I'm going to come back with this the tip of the brush and put a few darks in. Just before it dries, I'm going to come back in with some burnt sienna, because I want to go a bit warmer and stronger on the back of this coat here, down her arm, down the back of her leg here as well, just to bring that figure forward a bit more. A bit more there as well. Some of that warm is definitely wanting to come out into the wet into wet here. So I'm using the burnt sienna that we haven't really used much in itself back here, just to make a few darker warms, and even across him. Okay, we're on our final stages now, so there's a little bit of wet left here and there, but basically the painting is dry. So what I'm going to do now is just come back with a few darks. For instance, now I'll use a bit of my Prussian and a bit of the burnt sienna, a little bit of magenta into that, to make a very deep, a few darks, just to tidy up a few of these darks and the reflections here and there. Just little bits of shadow here and there to give a feeling of these reflections, and his feet and so on here. Don't want too much, just to say, just indications of it in there. This paper now, I've said you can either use rough or not. You might have more success with using rough on something like this, because you can really get the dry brush work, which I'm going to have a job doing if I'm just going to use this only. Now, again, I did talk about using dry brush. Let's take my brush and just get some lovely paint going on down here, and we'll just dry the brush out slightly and just see if we can drag over here. This brush needs to be quite a bit drier than this yet for this job. Here we go, dry brush techniques now, both horizontally and vertically. Those are the final stages of flattening tip of the brush out, and then just coming in here with a little bit of dry brush work, just to get these reflections running a bit better, both horizontally and vertically. Get a bit of texturing going. Now we can do this with this brush, or we can use stiffer flat brushes, but it's surprising just how well you can, and they say that the rougher the paper, the better the texturing you're going to get for something like this. How we can get this texturing now, using the dry brush like this, crisscrossing it. And I hope you've enjoyed that. It's fun to do, it's a very loose way to work, and it gives you this effect of very fluid watercolour that you cannot get in any other medium in quite the same way. Yes, I've shown you how to use wet in wet with acrylic inks, and this is a very strong watercolour of a similar vein, but I think that will do for this little demonstration, and you can have a go at playing with these fun things yourself. Well, after all that, I've decided that I want to show you how to freshen these things up with pastel. You might like it just as a watercolour. Equally, let's see what will happen when we play around with pastel. I'm going to use, in this case, the Unison pastels to try and liven this up a bit, bring it back with the lights and highlights again. If it had been done with a rough paper, I think we'd have had better textures down here, certainly for the dry brush work. So this is where I want to mainly work. In fact, I'm going to come back down here with some of these lighter colours and just bring back in some of my highlights, which have been a bit lost, and just lightly come across there with textures into this to just bring out these lights which we would have had if we'd used a rough paper. So here we show you how we can use pastels with watercolour, not just with the acrylic inks, to get these lovely effects and highlights. Let's put them back into there. We can play with these various colours now. To give us a sparkle again, bring this back again, where I've lost a bit of that because of the rather smooth paper. This knot paper I'm using is almost like a hot press. It's actually quite smooth. You see how immediately I can bring back some highlights into this, which is quite fun. I start using whites as well. So we can use this with acrylic inks, we can use it with water and pastel, and we can use it as I'm doing now, even with watercolour. And one reason I want to show you this is because it's a very good way to rescue a watercolour too. If you've overworked a watercolour, if you've made a watercolour tired, you can bring it back with pastels in this way, which is quite fun. So I can liven this whole thing up again and bring it back again, just by coming back in, just highlighting and texturing a little bit with these pastels. And just to say a bit of dry brush work, but instead of now using my brush for dry brush, I can just bring the pastels subtly across the paper to give this feeling of wetness. And if I want a little bit of bright colour here and there that I haven't lost maybe with the watercolour a bit, I can put a few pastels in, bring a little bit of this colour out here and there. Even up into the sky here, I can come back and bring out some of the yellows and greens if I want. So let's take a very light and just add some of these textures of leaves in. These unisons are lovely for this. Remember that I can always use water with these as well if I want, and I could come back into here now and start to use a bit of water and blend these in. So pastels with watercolour, pastels with water we've covered, pastels with acrylic inks we've covered. Now we're actually using pastels over watercolour to really give us some vibrance in this particular picture. And there we go, it's rather fun. Just a few more little details here and there. We don't want too much into this. And now, what do you think? I think that's about it personally. Just a bit of colour here and there. And that will do us. Gives you an idea.